They say your best friend is the person who knows all your secrets and loves you anyway. Marlowe knew mine. She knew Derek had been acting strange, working late, being secretive with his phone. She held my hand through every tearful conversation about my failing marriage. She even helped me hire a private investigator to catch my cheating husband. What a good friend, right? Always there when I needed her most. Always asking the right questions. Always so concerned about my well-being. It wasn't until I saw that text, "Can't wait to see you tonight, Em," that I realized the truth. My best friend wasn't helping me catch my husband's mistress. She was the mistress.
And now?
Now she was about to learn that the woman she'd been calling weak and clueless had been 3 steps ahead of her the entire time. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. My name is Vivian Cross, and if you had asked me 6 months ago to describe my life, I would have told you it was perfect. Picture perfect, actually. The kind of life that makes other people jealous when they scroll through your social media posts. I lived in Brookhaven, one of those suburbs where every lawn looks like it belongs in a magazine, and every house costs more than most people make in 5 years. My husband Derek was everything a woman could want: tall, charming, successful in real estate, and handsome enough that other wives would steal glances at him during neighborhood barbecues. We had been married for 7 years, together for 9, and everyone said we were the golden couple. Derek would bring me flowers every Friday, just because. We took romantic trips to Napa Valley and Martha's Vineyard. Our house was always perfectly decorated, always ready for the dinner parties we loved to host. But the most important part of my perfect life was my best friend, Marlowe Patterson. We had been roommates in college, and somehow that friendship had survived everything: different career paths, different cities for a few years, and even marriage. Marlowe was the sister I never had, the person I called when something wonderful happened or when everything went wrong. Marlowe had married Wesley, a quiet but brilliant corporate lawyer who specialized in family law. Wesley was the opposite of Derek in many ways. Where Derek was loud and social, Wesley was thoughtful and reserved. Where Derek commanded attention at parties, Wesley preferred quiet conversations in corners. But they balanced each other well, just like Marlowe and I did. The 4 of us had become inseparable over the years. Every summer, we rented a house together in Martha's Vineyard. Every winter, we planned ski trips to Colorado. We were each other's emergency contacts, the godparents to future children we all talked about having someday. It was during one of our regular game nights that I first noticed something was off. We were at Derek and my house, playing couples trivia, laughing over wine, and takeout from our favorite Italian place. Everything seemed normal until Derek's phone started buzzing constantly on the coffee table. "Aren't you going to check that?" Marlowe asked, gesturing toward the phone with her wine glass. Derek glanced at it and shrugged. "Just work stuff. Nothing that can't wait." But the buzzing continued, and I could see it was bothering everyone. Finally, I reached for it playfully. "Come on, Mr. Important. Let's see what crisis needs your immediate attention." Derek's hand shot out faster than I had ever seen him move, snatching the phone away from me. The force of his grab actually knocked over my wine glass, sending red wine spilling across our white coffee table. "Jesus, Derek," I said, jumping up to grab napkins. "It's just your phone." "Sorry," he said quickly, but his voice was tight. There might be confidential client information on there." I looked at him strangely. In 7 years of marriage, Derek had never been secretive about his phone. I knew his passcode. I had answered his calls when he was in the shower. This sudden protectiveness felt completely out of character. When I glanced up from cleaning the wine, I caught Marlowe and Wesley exchanging a look. It was quick, but there was something loaded about it, something that made my stomach tighten with unease. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," Marlowe said quickly, that bright smile I knew so well spreading across her face. Why wouldn't it be? But for the rest of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Derek kept his phone face down in his lap, and I noticed him checking it discreetly throughout the night. Marlowe seemed more animated than usual, talking loudly and laughing a little too hard at Derek's jokes. The next week, I found a receipt in Derek's car while looking for my sunglasses. It was from Victoria's Secret, expensive lingerie, definitely not my size, definitely not my style. I stared at the receipt for a long time, sitting in our garage, trying to come up with an innocent explanation. When Derek came home that evening, I was waiting with dinner ready and the receipt on the counter. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my voice light and curious rather than accusatory. Derek glanced at it and didn't even pause. "Oh, that. It's for Penelope's birthday next week. You know how she is about fancy things." Penelope was Derek's younger sister, and yes, she did love expensive gifts. It was a perfectly reasonable explanation. So, why did something about Derek's immediate, smooth response bother me? I called Penelope the next day, just to chat. We talked about work, about her new apartment, about the weather. Finally, I mentioned that Derek had been shopping for her birthday. "Oh, that's so sweet of him," Penelope said. "Though honestly, I'm surprised he remembered. You know how men are with dates." "Well, he wanted to get you something really special," I said carefully. "Something from Victoria's Secret." There was a pause. "Victoria's Secret? That's interesting. I mean, I appreciate the thought, but Derek has never bought me lingerie before. That would be kind of weird, wouldn't it?" After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Penelope had confirmed the story, but something in her voice had been off. Uncomfortable. Like she was reading from a script she hadn't quite memorized. That's when I started paying attention to things I had previously ignored, like how our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, seemed to be watching me with sympathetic eyes whenever I ran into her at the mailbox. "How are you doing, dear?" she asked one morning, her voice carrying a weight that suggested she wasn't just making small talk. "I'm fine, Mrs. Abernathy. How are you?" "Oh, I don't sleep as well as I used to. I'm up at all hours, looking out my window." She paused meaningfully. "I see things. Cars in places they shouldn't be. People coming and going at strange times." I felt my pulse quicken. "What kind of things?" But Mrs. Abernathy just patted my arm gently. "Just remember, dear, that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should watch most carefully." Her words haunted me for days. I started noticing things about Derek's behavior that I had previously dismissed. How he had started working late more often. How he seemed distracted during our conversations, always half listening while scrolling through his phone. How he had suddenly become very interested in going to the gym, buying new clothes, paying more attention to his appearance. The breaking point came at my company's annual party. I worked for a marketing firm downtown, and every year we threw a big celebration for clients and employees. Derek usually charmed everyone at these events, but this year he spent most of the evening talking to my assistant, Brielle. Brielle was 23, blonde, and the kind of pretty that made men forget they were married. I watched Derek lean in close to her, laughing at everything she said, touching her arm when he talked. It wasn't just friendly conversation. There was something deliberate and flirtatious about his attention. "Your husband's certainly making an impression," Marlowe said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "What do you mean?" "Just that Brielle seems very interested in whatever he's saying." Marlowe's voice carried a note of concern that felt genuine. "I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, but it's kind of obvious." I looked across the room again. Derek had his hand on the small of Brielle's back, guiding her toward the bar. Other people were starting to notice. "I should probably go rescue him from himself," I said, forcing a laugh. "Vivian," Marlowe said, catching my arm. "If you ever need to talk about anything, you know I'm here for you, right?" The sincerity in her voice was comforting. Whatever was happening with Derek, at least I had Marlowe. At least I had someone I could trust completely. For our anniversary that month, Derek took me to Chez Laurent, an upscale French restaurant downtown. It should have been romantic, but Derek seemed distracted the entire evening. He kept checking his phone, looking around the restaurant like he was expecting someone. When our waiter brought us a bottle of wine we hadn't ordered, Derek looked annoyed. "I'm sorry," the waiter said. "Isn't this your usual?" "For table 7. "We didn't order wine," Derek said curtly. "My apologies, Mr. Cross." I thought, well, you're usually here with. The waiter trailed off, looking confused and embarrassed. "With who?" I asked. "No one," Derek said quickly. He has me confused with someone else. But the waiter looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. After he left, I stared at Derek across the candlelit table. You come here regularly? Sometimes. For business dinners. At table 7? I don't pay attention to table numbers, Vivian, but I could tell he was lying. There was something about the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, the way his jaw tightened when he was irritated. In 9 years together, I had learned to read Derek's tells. That night, I started keeping a notebook. I wrote down every strange conversation, every unexplained absence, every time Derek's story didn't quite add up. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was looking for problems that didn't exist. But the evidence kept accumulating. Late nights at work became more frequent. I found unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, not my perfume, something floral and expensive that I didn't recognize. There were charges on our credit cards for restaurants I had never been to, hotels in parts of the city where Derek had no business. The worst discovery came when I was doing laundry and found a folded piece of paper in Derek's gym bag. It was a handwritten note, feminine handwriting, that said simply, "Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive. I stared at that letter for a long time, turning it over in my hands. Who was M? And why did Derek make her feel alive when he barely seemed to notice I existed anymore? I knew I needed help, but I wasn't ready to involve lawyers or private investigators. Not yet. I needed someone I could trust, someone who knew Derek and could help me figure out what was really going on. I needed Wesley. The decision to approach Wesley felt both natural and terrifying. He was a lawyer, which meant he understood discretion and legal implications. He was also Derek's friend, which made me worry about divided loyalties. But most importantly, he was married to my best friend, and if anyone would understand the importance of protecting a marriage, it would be him. I met Wesley for lunch at a small cafe downtown, far from our usual haunts in Brookhaven. He arrived exactly on time, as always, wearing one of his perfectly pressed suits and carrying the leather briefcase that never left his side. "This is unexpected," he said, settling into the booth across from me. "Not that I'm not happy to see you, but Marlowe mentioned you've been stressed lately. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." I took a deep breath. "Wesley, I think Derek is having an affair." Wesley's face went through several expressions: surprise, concern, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "That's a serious accusation, Vivian. What makes you think that?" I pulled out my notebook and began reading him the list of suspicious behaviors, strange receipts, unexplained absences. Wesley listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad he had produced from his briefcase. "And then there's this," I said, sliding the note across the table. Wesley examined it carefully, holding it up to the light like he was looking for fingerprints. "This is definitely concerning. Have you confronted Derek about any of this?" "Some of it. He always has explanations, but they feel rehearsed. Like he's been preparing for these questions." Wesley nodded slowly. "In my experience, when someone's gut instinct tells them something is wrong, they're usually right. The question is what you want to do about it." "I need proof. Real proof. Not just suspicious behavior and weird feelings." "I can help you with that," Wesley said. "I work with a private investigator who specializes in these kinds of cases. Very discreet, very thorough. His name is Jasper Novak, and he's helped several of my clients gather evidence for divorce proceedings." The word divorce hit me like a physical blow. Even though I had been thinking about the possibility, hearing it said out loud made everything feel suddenly real and final. "I'm not ready to think about divorce yet," I said quickly. "I just need to know the truth." "Of course. But Vivian, if Derek is having an affair, you need to start protecting yourself financially. Asset protection, documentation of marital property, that sort of thing. I can handle all of that discreetly." I agreed to meet with Jasper, and Wesley arranged everything. 2 days later, I found myself in Wesley's law office after hours, sitting across from a man who looked like he belonged in a detective novel. Jasper Novak was probably in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail of my appearance and demeanor. "Mrs. Cross," he said, his voice gravelly from what I assumed were years of cigarettes. Wesley has filled me in on your situation. I want you to understand that what we're about to discuss is completely confidential, but it's also going to be invasive and potentially painful. Are you prepared for that? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was prepared for anything. Good. Now, I'm going to need access to your husband's routines, his schedule, his regular locations. I'll also need recent photos and a description of his vehicle. I provided everything Jasper asked for, feeling like I was betraying Derek even as I handed over the information. Wesley insisted on handling all the financial arrangements, paying Jasper's fees through his law firm to maintain my anonymity. The first week will be basic surveillance, Jasper explained. I'll establish his patterns, identify any regular meetings or locations that seem suspicious. After that, we'll get more targeted. That first week was torture. I went through the motions of normal life. Work, dinner with Derek, conversations about mundane things like grocery lists and weekend plans, while knowing that somewhere in the city, a private investigator was following my husband and documenting his betrayal. Marlowe was my lifeline during those dark days. She seemed to sense that I was struggling, calling more often, dropping by with coffee or wine, always ready to listen when I needed to talk. You seem really stressed lately, she said one evening as we sat on my back porch, sharing a bottle of wine while Derek was supposedly at a client dinner. Is everything okay with work? Work is fine, I said. It's everything else that feels like it's falling apart. What do you mean? I wanted to tell her everything about Wesley, about Jasper, about the investigation that was probably happening at that very moment. But something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of making everything real by saying it out loud, or maybe it was the hope that I was wrong about everything. I think Derek might be. I started, then stopped. I think our marriage might be in trouble. Marlowe reached over and squeezed my hand. Oh, honey, do you want to talk about it? I don't even know where to start. He's been acting so strange lately. Secretive. Distant. Like his mind is somewhere else all the time. Have you tried talking to him about it? How do you ask your husband if he's cheating on you? Hey, honey, pass the salt, and by the way, are you sleeping with someone else? Marlowe laughed, but it was gentle, not mocking. Maybe not exactly like that. But communication is so important in marriage. Maybe he's just stressed about work or going through some kind of midlife thing. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it. Listen, Marlowe said, if you need anything, someone to talk to, a place to stay, whatever, you know I'm here for you, right? We've been best friends for too long to let anything come between us. Her words were so sincere, so comforting, that I almost started crying right there on the porch. Whatever was happening with Derek, at least I had Marlowe. At least I had someone I could count on completely. The first surveillance report came a week later. Jasper had documented Derek's movements for 7 days, and the results were damning. Derek had lied about working late 3 times that week. Instead of client dinners, he had met with an unidentified woman at various locations around the city. The photos were grainy but clear enough to see Derek with a brunette woman who appeared to be around my age. They were photographed at a coffee shop downtown, in the parking garage of a boutique hotel, and walking together through a park I had never been to with my husband. The subject appears to be in a romantic relationship with this individual, Jasper's report stated in clinical language. Physical contact observed includes hand-holding, embracing, and kissing. The relationship appears established and ongoing rather than casual. I stared at the photos until my eyes burned. There was my husband of 7 years, holding hands with another woman, kissing her like he kissed me, looking at her with an expression I recognized because it used to be reserved for me. I'm sorry, Wesley said when I called him after reading the report. I know this isn't what you were hoping to hear. Actually, it is what I was hoping to hear, I said, surprising myself. Not that I'm happy about it, but I was starting to think I was going crazy. At least now I know I'm not imagining things. What do you want to do next? I want to know who she is. Wesley arranged for more targeted surveillance. Jasper began following the mystery woman, trying to identify her and understand her relationship with Derek. Meanwhile, Wesley suggested we install tracking software on Derek's devices to gather digital evidence. I can't do it, I told Wesley. I can't spy on him in our own home. It feels too violating. I understand, Wesley said. But you need to think about protecting yourself. If Derek is planning to leave you for this other woman, he might already be moving assets, hiding money, preparing for a divorce. You need to know what you're dealing with. The thought that Derek might be planning to leave me hadn't occurred to me. I had been so focused on the betrayal, the hurt of discovering his affair, that I hadn't considered the practical implications. Do you really think he's planning to leave me? I think you need to be prepared for any possibility. That weekend, we hosted a dinner party at our house, one of those elaborate affairs Derek loved, with expensive wine and multiple courses and conversations that lasted late into the night. Marlowe and Wesley came, along with several other couples from our neighborhood. I watched Derek throughout the evening, studying his behavior with new eyes. He was charming and attentive, playing the role of the perfect husband for our guests. But I noticed things I had missed before: how he kept his phone face down on the table, how he excused himself to take a call that he claimed was work-related, how he seemed almost relieved when guests started leaving. After everyone was gone, and we were cleaning up, Derek's phone buzzed with a text message. He was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher, and his phone was on the coffee table next to me. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. The message was from someone listed as M. Patterson, and it said, "Had such a wonderful time today. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. M. Patterson." The same M who had written the note I found in Derek's gym bag. But Patterson, that was Marlowe's maiden name. She had kept it professionally after getting married. I stared at the phone screen until it went dark, my mind racing. It had to be a coincidence. There were probably dozens of M. Pattersons in the city. It couldn't be. But as I looked around our living room, still scattered with wine glasses and dinner plates from the evening, I started noticing things that hadn't registered before. Marlowe had been to our house dozens of times over the years, but tonight she had moved through it like she knew exactly where everything was. She had gone to the kitchen to get more wine without asking where we kept the bottle opener. She had used the downstairs bathroom without asking for directions. Small things. Meaningless things. Except that they weren't meaningless at all when you added them up. The days following that dinner party were some of the strangest of my life. I went through my normal routine: work, errands, conversations with Derek about mundane household things, while feeling like I was living in two realities at once. In one reality, I was Vivian Cross, successful marketing executive, loving wife, devoted friend to Marlowe Patterson. In the other reality, I was a woman whose husband was having an affair with her best friend, and everyone was lying to her face while pretending to care about her well-being. I couldn't stop thinking about that text message. M. Patterson. It had to be a coincidence, but the coincidences were starting to pile up in ways that felt less and less random. I began paying closer attention to Marlowe's behavior when she was around Derek. At the dinner party, I had been so focused on Derek that I hadn't really watched her. But thinking back, I remembered moments that now seemed loaded with meaning: how she had laughed a little too hard at his jokes, how she had found excuses to touch his arm when she talked to him, how she had offered to help him in the kitchen when Wesley and I were deep in conversation about something else. Wesley had been building a case for my divorce, gathering financial documents and legal precedents. But I realized I needed to gather some evidence of my own before I was ready to make any decisions about my marriage. I started with Derek's laptop. He kept it in his home office, and while it was password protected, I knew Derek well enough to guess his passwords. He used variations of his birthday, our anniversary, his college football team, things that were meaningful to him but not particularly creative. On his third try, the laptop opened. I felt like a criminal as I searched through his files, his browser history, his email accounts. Most of it was boring work stuff: property listings, client communications, industry newsletters. But buried in his deleted emails, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was an email thread between Derek and someone with the email address Marlowe, p.writer@gmail.com. The emails went back 8 months and became increasingly intimate over time. The early ones were friendly but professional: discussions about real estate investments, recommendations for restaurants, complaints about their respective spouses' work schedules. But by the most recent emails, they were making plans to meet, expressing feelings for each other, and discussing what they called our situation. I hate lying to Vivian, one of Derek's emails said. She's a good person, and she doesn't deserve this. But I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Marlowe's response was even worse. I know it's terrible, but sometimes I think she's so focused on her perfect life that she doesn't even really see you. She doesn't appreciate what she has. When we're together, you become the person you're supposed to be. I sat in Derek's office chair, staring at the screen, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. It wasn't just the affair, it was the way they talked about me. Like I was an obstacle to their happiness. Like I was too stupid or self-absorbed to notice what was happening right in front of me. The worst part was that some of what Marlowe wrote was probably true. I had been focused on maintaining our perfect life, our perfect image. I had been working long hours, planning elaborate dinner parties, posting carefully curated photos on social media that showed the world how happy we were. Maybe I hadn't been paying enough attention to Derek's needs. Maybe I had taken our marriage for granted. But that didn't excuse what they were doing to me. I printed out the most damaging emails and deleted them from Derek's computer, covering my tracks carefully. Then I called Jasper and asked him to focus his surveillance on Marlowe. You think the other woman is your friend? Jasper asked. I think the other woman is my best friend. I corrected him. That's rough, Mrs. Cross. Real rough. But it'll make the surveillance easier. I already know what she looks like from the photos you provided. That afternoon, Jasper called me with confirmation. He had followed Marlowe to the same boutique hotel where Derek had been photographed with his mystery woman. The timing matched Derek's supposed client meeting perfectly. They've got a routine, Jasper reported. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, same hotel, same room. They've been doing this for months. I felt sick. Tuesdays and Thursdays were the days Marlowe usually called me to chat, to check in on how I was doing, to make plans for the weekend. She had been calling me from hotel rooms where she had just finished sleeping with my husband. That evening, Marlowe called right on schedule. Hey, how was your day? She asked, her voice bright and cheerful. Fine, I said, trying to keep my voice normal. How was yours? Oh, the usual. Boring meeting with a client, grocery shopping, laundry. Sometimes I think my life is painfully ordinary. I almost laughed. There she was, lying effortlessly about spending the afternoon in bed with my husband, while complaining that her life was ordinary. How's Wesley? I asked. He's good. Working late again tonight, as usual. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to his job instead of him. Another lie. I knew from my own surveillance that Wesley was actually at home, probably wondering where his wife was during her supposed errands. And Derek? Marlowe asked. How are things with you two? The concern in her voice was so convincing that for a moment, I almost believed she genuinely cared about my marriage. We're fine, I said. Everything's perfect. I'm glad to hear that. You two seem so happy together. I hope Wesley and I can have what you and Derek have. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her exactly what Derek and I had, a marriage built on lies, sustained by her betrayal. But instead, I just said, I'm sure you will. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, trying to process the depth of Marlowe's deception. This wasn't just an affair. This was a systematic campaign of manipulation and lies that had been going on for months. I thought about all the times Marlowe had comforted me when I was worried about Derek's behavior. All the times she had encouraged me to trust him, to work on our communication, to focus on the positive aspects of our marriage. She had been sabotaging me while pretending to support me. The next day, I met with Wesley to discuss the divorce proceedings. He had prepared a comprehensive financial analysis showing how Derek had been moving money around, making investments that would be difficult to trace or divide. He's been planning this for a while, Wesley said. The financial maneuvering started about 6 months ago, which suggests this isn't a sudden decision or a moment of weakness. This is calculated. What about community property laws? Can he really hide money from me? Not legally, no. But he can make it complicated and expensive to find. The good news is that we have documentation of his efforts to conceal assets, which judges don't like. If we can prove deliberate financial deception, It could work in your favor. Wesley seemed uncomfortable throughout our meeting, more tense than usual. I wondered if he was beginning to suspect something about his own wife's behavior. Wesley, I said carefully, how much time has Marlowe been spending away from home lately? He looked up from his legal papers with surprise. What do you mean? I just noticed that when I call her, she's often out running errands or meeting with clients. She seems busier than usual. Wesley frowned. Now that you mention it, she has been working more. New freelance writing projects, she says. Why do you ask? I couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. I needed more evidence, and I needed to be absolutely certain before I destroyed another marriage. No reason. I just worry about her working too hard. But I could see that my question had planted a seed of doubt in Wesley's mind. He was a smart man, and once he started paying attention to his wife's schedule, he would probably start noticing the same discrepancies I had noticed with Derek. That weekend, Derek announced that he had to go out of town for a client meeting. Big property deal in Charleston, he said. I'll probably be gone until Tuesday. I knew he was lying. Charleston was a 4-hour drive, hardly requiring a 4-day trip. But I played along, helping him pack and wishing him luck with his client. After Derek left, I called Marlowe to see if she wanted to have dinner, maybe watch a movie. It would be interesting to see if she was mysteriously busy for the next few days. Oh, I'd love to, she said, but I'm actually going to visit my sister in Atlanta this weekend. Last-minute trip. Family drama, you know how it is. Marlowe didn't have a sister in Atlanta. She had one sister, who lived in Seattle and was currently 8 months pregnant. I knew this because Marlowe and I had been planning to attend her baby's shower next month. That's too bad, I said. Tell her I said hi. I will. We'll catch up when I get back, okay? That night, I had Jasper follow both Derek and Marlowe. His report the next morning confirmed what I already knew. They had driven together to a bed and breakfast in the mountains, using fake names to check in as Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. The photos Jasper provided showed them walking hand in hand through a small mountain town, sharing breakfast on the porch of their cabin, kissing like newlyweds. They looked happy. They looked like they were in love. And that hurt more than anything else. It wasn't just sex or physical attraction. Derek looked at Marlowe the way he used to look at me. They were building something together, planning a future that didn't include their current spouses. On Monday morning, I was sitting in my office trying to focus on work when my phone rang. It was Marlowe, calling from her supposed trip to Atlanta. Hey, I just wanted to check in, she said. How are you doing? Is Derek back from Charleston yet? Not until tomorrow, I said. Well, at least you get some time to yourself. Sometimes it's nice to have the house to yourself, isn't it? Absolutely, I agreed. How's your sister? Oh, she's fine. Just the usual family drama. You know how families can be. I listened to her lie to me with such ease, such practiced confidence, and I realized that this conversation was going to be my last as her friend. Whatever happened next, our friendship was over. 12 years of shared memories, countless hours of laughter and tears and secrets, all of it destroyed by her betrayal. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I had one more card to play, one final test to confirm what I already knew. Marlowe, I said, I need to tell you something. I think Derek is having an affair. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Marlowe finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. What makes you think that? Just little things. He's been acting strange, working late, being secretive about his phone. I found some receipts for things I didn't recognize. I'm probably being paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Oh, honey, Marlowe said, and her voice was full of sympathy that I now knew was completely fake. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Have you talked to him about it? I don't know how to bring it up. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being insecure and paranoid? Trust your instincts, Marlowe said. If something feels wrong, it probably is. But you need to be careful about how you handle this. Don't make accusations without proof. The advice was actually sound, which made it even more twisted. She was counseling me on how to catch my cheating husband while she was the one he was cheating with. I just feel so alone, I said. Like I don't have anyone I can trust. You have me, Marlowe said firmly. You'll always have me. Whatever happens, I'm here for you. When I hung up the phone, I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming or crying, and I was at work. Marlowe Patterson, my best friend for 12 years, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, was sleeping with my husband and lying to my face while offering her support and friendship. It was time to stop being the victim and start being the hunter. Armed with the devastating truth about Derek and Marlowe's affair, I faced a choice that would define the rest of my life. I could confront them immediately, scream and cry, and demand explanations that would only lead to more lies. Or I could be smarter than they had given me credit for. I chose to be smarter. The next morning, I called Marlowe with tears in my voice. Fake tears, but she couldn't see me through the phone. "Marlowe, I need you," I said, letting my voice crack with emotion. "I think I'm losing my mind. Derek came home from Charleston last night, and he was so distant. Cold. Like he could barely stand to look at me." "Oh, honey," Marlowe said, and I could practically hear her trying not to sound excited. "I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? Would you? I don't know who else to talk to about this." Within an hour, Marlowe was sitting in my kitchen, holding my hands while I told her about my growing suspicions that Derek was cheating. I watched her face carefully as I spoke, noting how she managed to look concerned while probably celebrating inside. "I feel like such a fool," I said. "Maybe I've been a terrible wife. Maybe I drove him away somehow." "Don't you dare blame yourself," Marlowe said firmly. "If Derek is having an affair, that's on him, not you. You're an amazing wife, Vivian. Any man would be lucky to have you." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Here was the woman who had been stealing my husband for 8 months, telling me what a wonderful wife I was. "I just don't understand how I didn't see it," I continued. "I mean, if Derek is cheating, this other woman must be someone he sees regularly, someone he feels comfortable with. Maybe someone we both know." I watched Marlowe's face for any reaction, but she was better at hiding her emotions than I had expected. "It's possible," she said carefully. "Affairs often happen with people in the cheater's regular orbit. Co-workers, neighbors, friends of friends. The worst part is not knowing who she is," I said. "I keep imagining her. Is she prettier than me? Younger? What does she have that I don't?" Marlowe squeezed my hands. "Stop torturing yourself. Whoever she is, she's not better than you. She's just different. Sometimes men are idiots who think the grass is greener somewhere else." Meanwhile, Wesley was helping me document everything for the divorce proceedings. The financial forensics team he had hired discovered that Derek had been even more systematic in his deception than we originally thought. He had opened secret accounts, transferred money to offshore investments, and even put down deposits on properties that weren't in both our names. "He's been planning this for over a year," Wesley told me during one of our meetings. "This isn't an affair that got out of hand. This is a calculated exit strategy." "What about Marlowe?" I asked carefully. "Have you noticed anything different about her behavior lately?" Wesley looked uncomfortable. "Actually, yes. She's been working a lot of evenings, taking on new freelance projects. She says the work is demanding, requires a lot of client meetings." "Do you believe her?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I want to believe her, but some of the details don't add up. She mentioned meeting with a client at a restaurant downtown, but when I called the restaurant to make a reservation for us, they said they'd never heard of the company she named." I could see Wesley beginning to piece together his own suspicions. He was too smart not to notice the inconsistencies in Marlowe's stories, especially now that I had planted the seed of doubt. "Wesley," I said gently, "what if I told you that Derek's affair might be with someone we both know? Someone close to us?" His face went pale. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should both start paying closer attention to the people we trust most." That evening, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I had Jasper switch his surveillance from Derek to Marlowe, focusing on her secret apartment that Derek had been paying for. The results were exactly what I expected, but somehow still devastating to see in black and white. Jasper's photos showed Marlowe living a completely different life in that apartment. Derek had clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, framed photos of the two of them on the nightstand. It wasn't just an affair, it was a practice marriage. The most damning evidence came from Marlowe's social media accounts. Using fake profiles, I discovered that she had been posting photos from the apartment, referring to it as her new place and talking about exciting changes in her life. She had been introducing Derek to her online friends as her new boyfriend, conveniently forgetting to mention that he was married to her best friend. I also discovered that Marlowe had been lying to everyone about the state of her marriage. She had told her college friends that she and Wesley were taking a break. She had told her family that they were having problems and considering separation. She had been systematically preparing everyone in her life for her divorce while pretending to be happily married when she was around Derek and me. The cruelest discovery was a series of text messages between Derek and Marlowe that Jasper had managed to capture through digital surveillance. They were planning their future together, talking about where they would live, what kind of wedding they wanted, even discussing having children together. "I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore," one of Derek's messages read. "I want to show the whole world how much I love you." Marlowe's response was even worse. "Soon, baby. Once the divorces are final, we can start our real life together. No more pretending to care about their boring problems." Their boring problems. That's what my marriage had become to them, a boring problem that they had to pretend to care about while they built their secret relationship. But the most revealing exchange came when they discussed their plan for revealing the affair. They weren't planning to confess. They were planning to manipulate the situation so that Wesley and I would discover the truth in a way that made us look like the unstable, suspicious ones. "We'll let them catch us," Derek had written. "Make it look accidental. That way we come across as people who fell in love despite trying to do the right thing, instead of people who planned this whole thing." "Exactly," Marlowe had replied. Poor Derek and Marlowe, torn between love and loyalty. People will feel sorry for us instead of hating us. Reading those messages, I realized that even their plan to hurt me was calculated and manipulative. They wanted to be seen as tragic romantic figures rather than cheating liars. That's when I decided they needed to learn what real manipulation looked like. 2 weeks later, Marlowe called me in tears. Real tears this time, not the fake concern she had been showing me for months. "Vivian, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw Derek. I saw him with another woman." I almost laughed at the irony, but I managed to sound shocked instead. "What? Where?" "At Northbrook Shopping Center. They were by the fountain and they were kissing." "I'm so sorry, Vivian." "I took photos, but they're not very clear. I was too far away, and I was shaking." "Oh my God," I said, putting just the right amount of devastation in my voice. "Are you sure it was Derek?" "I'm positive. I called you as soon as I saw them. I'm driving to your house right now." When Marlowe arrived, she was the picture of the concerned best friend bearing terrible news. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands were shaking as she showed me the blurry photos on her phone. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have been completely convinced by her performance. "I can't believe this is happening to you," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like a knife in my back. "I'm so sorry I had to be the one to tell you." "Thank you for telling me," I said, my face buried in her shoulder so she couldn't see my expression. "I know this must have been hard for you." "You're my best friend," she said. "I couldn't let you live a lie." The hypocrisy was so overwhelming that I almost broke character. Here was the woman who had been helping me live a lie for 8 months, talking about not letting me be deceived. We sat in my living room, Marlowe holding my hands while I pretended to process this devastating news. She offered to stay with me, to help me confront Derek, to do whatever I needed. Every word out of her mouth was a carefully calculated lie designed to maintain her cover while appearing supportive. "I just need a few minutes," I said finally. "Would you mind if I use the bathroom?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." While Marlowe waited in my living room, probably texting Derek to let him know the plan was in motion, I stood in my bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. This was it. This was the moment where I could either continue being the victim of their manipulation, or I could turn the tables completely. When I returned to the living room, I was done playing games. "Marlowe," I said calmly, "you're right. Derek is cheating. With you." The color drained from her face so quickly that I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. I know about the apartment on 5th Street. I know about the secret bank accounts. I know about the text messages where you call my problems boring. I know about your plans to make this look accidental so people would feel sorry for you instead of hating you for what you've done. Marlowe finally found her voice. Vivian, I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Marlowe. The question is whether you're going to keep lying to my face or if you're going to show me enough respect to tell the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating whether she could still salvage the situation with more lies. Finally, her shoulders slumped in defeat. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Long enough. Long enough to protect myself. Long enough to make sure you and Derek don't destroy my life the way you planned to. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said, tears starting to flow again. These tears looked real, but I had learned not to trust anything about Marlowe Patterson. We didn't plan this. We tried to fight it. You tried to fight it by renting an apartment together? By planning your future while lying to your husband and your best friend? That's an interesting way to fight temptation. Marlowe looked around my living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Are you recording this conversation? What do you think? She closed her eyes. What do you want from me, Vivian? I want you to call Derek and tell him to come home. I want you to sit here and wait for him. And then I want you both to explain to Wesley what you've been doing. Wesley doesn't know. Not yet. But he's about to. Right on cue, my doorbell rang. Marlowe looked at me with panic in her eyes. That's Derek, isn't it? You called him. Actually, I said, walking to the front door. That's Wesley. I opened the door to find Wesley standing on my porch with several manila folders in his hands and a grim expression on his face. Hello, Vivian, he said. I think it's time we had a conversation about our spouses. Behind me, I heard Marlowe gasp. Wesley walked into my living room and looked at his wife sitting on my couch. Hello, Marlowe, he said calmly. Imagine my surprise when I hired my own private investigator and discovered that my wife has been living a double life for the better part of a year. Marlowe started to speak, but Wesley held up his hand. Before you say anything, you should know that I have photos, financial records, and documentation of every lie you've told me. I also have copies of the text messages between you and Derek discussing your plans to manipulate both of your divorces. Wesley, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You made your choice. You've been making it every day for months. Wesley turned to me. Vivian, I owe you an apology. I've known about this affair for 2 weeks, and I should have told you immediately. But I wanted to gather evidence for both of our divorce cases first. You've known for 2 weeks? I asked. My private investigator found the apartment. Once I saw the photos of Derek's belongings there, everything else fell into place. The late nights, the mysterious clients, the way Marlowe had been acting like our marriage was already over. I looked at Marlowe, who was crying silently on my couch. So you knew Wesley was suspicious, and you still went through with this charade today? I thought I could fix it, she whispered. I thought if I could make it look like I was just being a good friend, maybe Wesley wouldn't put the pieces together. Even now, you're still trying to manipulate the situation, Wesley said. Even caught red-handed, you're still lying. That's when Derek walked through my front door without knocking, calling out cheerfully, Honey, I'm home early. I thought we could. He stopped dead when he saw the three of us in the living room. Wesley holding his evidence folders, me standing with my arms crossed, Marlowe crying on the couch. What's going on? Derek asked, but his face already showed that he knew exactly what was happening. We're having a truth-telling session, I said. Your turn, Derek. Tell Wesley and me about your relationship with Marlowe. Derek looked around the room like he was calculating his chances of escape. I don't know what you think you know, but... Derek, Wesley said quietly, I have photos of you moving your clothes into my wife's secret apartment. I have bank records showing you've been paying her rent and credit card bills. I have text messages between the two of you planning your life together. So, I suggest you skip the denial phase and move straight to dealing with the consequences. The confrontation that followed was ugly and painful, but also liberating. Derek tried to blame me for neglecting our marriage. Marlowe tried to claim they had fallen in love despite trying to resist their feelings. Both of them attempted to minimize the planning and calculation that had gone into their affair. But Wesley and I had too much evidence for their lies to hold up. We had documentation of financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and systematic deception that had been going on for over a year. The divorce proceedings that followed were swift and brutal. Derek discovered that his attempts to hide assets actually worked against him in court. Judge Morrison was particularly unimpressed with Derek's financial deception and awarded me a settlement that left him struggling to maintain his real estate business. "Mr. Cross," Judge Morrison said during our final hearing, "your attempts to defraud your wife during these proceedings demonstrate a pattern of dishonesty that this court finds deeply troubling. Your settlement reflects not just the division of marital assets, but a penalty for your deliberate attempts to circumvent the law." Marlowe's divorce from Wesley was even more devastating for her. Their prenuptial agreement, which she had signed without reading carefully, left her with almost nothing. The apartment Derek had been paying for was in his name, so she lost that too when he could no longer afford it. Within 6 months, Marlowe had moved back in with her parents in Ohio. Her freelance writing career never recovered from the scandal, and Derek, facing financial ruin and social ostracism, eventually moved to Florida to start over. But the most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't financial, it was social. Word of their affair spread quickly through our social circle in Brookhaven. The elaborate deception, the betrayal of friendship, the calculated nature of their manipulation turned them into social pariahs overnight. I always thought there was something off about Marlowe, several people told me after the truth came out. She seemed too interested in other people's business, too eager to be involved in everyone's relationships. Mrs. Abernathy, my elderly neighbor, pulled me aside one day while I was checking my mail. "I tried to warn you, dear," she said. "I saw that girl's car in your driveway at odd hours when Derek was supposed to be at work. I saw them together in his car. But I didn't know how to tell you, without sounding like a gossipy old woman." "You did try to warn me," I said. "I just wasn't ready to hear it. Sometimes we need to be ready to see the truth before we can accept it," she said wisely. Wesley and I maintained a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience. We had both been betrayed by the people closest to us, and we had both chosen to handle it with intelligence rather than emotion. "You know what the strangest part is?" Wesley said one evening as we sat on my back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset. "I think Derek and Marlowe actually believed they were the victims in all of this. Like they were tragic romantic figures whose love was being kept apart by cruel circumstances. Instead of two selfish people who destroyed 2 marriages for their own gratification," I added. "Exactly. They never took responsibility for the pain they caused. Even in the end, they were trying to make us feel sorry for them." A year later, I used my divorce settlement to start my own marketing consultancy. Free from the pressure of maintaining Derek's image and supporting his career, I discovered that I was much better at business than I had ever realized. My company grew quickly, attracting clients who appreciated my direct communication style and strategic thinking. I also started therapy, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand how I had missed so many warning signs. How had I been so blind to Derek's deception? How had I failed to see Marlowe's manipulation? "You trusted the people you loved," my therapist, Dr. Sarah Coleman, explained. "That's not a character flaw. That's what healthy people do in healthy relationships. The problem wasn't with your trust, the problem was with their trustworthiness." But I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe. But even if you had, what would you have done differently? Confronted Derek the first time you found suspicious receipts? He would have lied, just like he lied about everything else. The only difference is that you might not have gathered enough evidence to protect yourself financially. Dr. Coleman was right. My methodical approach to discovering the truth had ultimately saved me from much worse consequences. 2 years after my divorce, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Marlowe calling from Ohio. "Vivian," she said, her voice small and uncertain, "I know I have no right to call you, but I needed to tell you how sorry I am." I didn't hang up immediately, though part of me wanted to. "I've been in therapy," she continued, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could do what I did to you, to Wesley, to our friendship. And what did you learn? I asked. That I was jealous of you, of your life, your marriage, your success. Instead of dealing with my own problems, I decided to destroy what you had built. I told myself that Derek wasn't happy with you, that I was saving him somehow. But the truth is, I was just selfish and cruel. I listened to her confession without emotion. The words I had once desperately wanted to hear now felt empty and pointless. I know you'll probably never forgive me, Marlowe said, but I wanted you to know that losing you was the worst consequence of everything I did. Worse than losing Wesley, worse than losing my career, worse than having to move back home. You were the best friend I ever had, and I threw it away for a man who dumped me the minute his life got complicated. Derek left you? 6 months ago. When his business started failing and he couldn't afford the lifestyle he had promised me, he decided I was too much trouble. Turns out Derek Cross isn't very loyal when things get difficult. There was a bitter irony in Derek abandoning Marlowe the same way he had abandoned me. But I felt no satisfaction in her pain. I hope you figure out your life, Marlowe, I said finally. But I can't be part of that process. Some things can't be fixed and some people can't be forgiven. What you did wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice you made every single day for 8 months. After I hung up, I sat in my new home office, looking out at the garden I had planted behind my townhouse. It was smaller than the house I had shared with Derek, but it was mine. Everything in it reflected my choices, my taste, my values. That evening, I had dinner with a group of friends I had made through my business networking group. Real friends this time, people who had earned my trust through consistency and honesty rather than shared history and assumption. You seem happy, my friend Jennifer noted as we shared dessert. Really happy, not just putting on a brave face. I am happy, I said, and realized it was true. It took me a while to get here, but I finally feel like I'm living my actual life instead of some performance of what I thought my life should look like. Any regrets? Asked Michael, another friend who had gone through his own difficult divorce. I thought about it seriously. I regret trusting people who didn't deserve it. I regret not paying attention to my instincts sooner. But I don't regret the way I handled things once I discovered the truth. I'm proud of how I protected myself and fought back. That night, as I locked up my house and turned off the lights, I reflected on how much my life had changed. 2 years ago, I had been Vivian Cross, wife and hostess, living for other people's approval and other people's happiness. Now I was just Vivian, business owner and survivor, living for my own goals and my own peace of mind. The betrayal of Derek and Marlowe had nearly destroyed me, but ultimately it had freed me from a life built on illusions. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than I had been given credit for, and worthy of much better treatment than I had accepted for so long. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes people do you a favor when they show you who they really are. And sometimes, the life you build from the ruins of your old life is better than anything you could have imagined. My name is Vivian Cross, and I finally know exactly who that is. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be your greatest enemy? Sometimes the hardest lesson we learn is that betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we love most. If this story hit close to home, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the hidden darkness in everyday relationships.